Welcome to Infidelity Testimonies. It's quite astonishing that more than 90% of you enjoy our videos yet haven't clicked that subscribe button. If these tales resonate with you and you crave more, be sure to hit that subscribe button and enable notifications. In a mere moment, you can assist us in crafting even more tailored content just for you. I once believed that true and powerful love could never shatter, that once you are united, nothing can disturb your bond. However, I made an error. Love isn't crafted from stone, it resembles glass much more closely. Under the perfect illumination, it radiates with stunning beauty. Yet even the tiniest fissure has the potential to expand, ultimately shattering it entirely. Thomas and I have shared 80 wonderful years of marriage. 8 decades marked by monotony, restless nights, dawn awakenings, dialogues that resembled mere checklists, and prolonged uncomfortable pauses. He resembled an architect, methodical and rational, while I was a paramedic perpetually in motion. I found myself immersed in my emotions, simply flowing along. As time passed, the distance between us expanded to such an extent that it seemed we were inhabiting entirely separate realms. It wasn't an immediate realization, but gradually I became aware of the way he transformed each time I returned home weary from the day. He hardly glanced up. Kisses turned into fleeting pecks, and our meaningful conversations dwindled to brief, uncomfortable snippets. Then Julian arrived. On a drizzly evening, we encountered each other for the very first time. He was hurried into the emergency room after a collision involving a motorbike. A fractured rib, a dislocated shoulder, and a mischievous smile in the face of agony. "It seems I'll be stuck with you for a bit," he quipped, his tone playful and inviting. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt truly seen. I ought to have maintained my distance, yet I chose not to. Julian possessed a unique ability to make time feel as though it was stretching out before us. He observed the subtle details, not merely my words, but all that surrounded them. There were pauses I chose not to interrupt. He inquired about the books I cherished, the challenging days, and the instances that brought me joy. In his presence, I transcended the roles of paramedic and wife. I was Claire, and I had lost touch with that feeling. It began as merely a subtle sensation. I lingered in his hospital room longer than necessary. I found myself laughing much more than I typically do. I anticipated the opportunity to work with a sense of enthusiasm I hadn't experienced in years. Initially, I persuaded myself it was innocuous, that there was nothing amiss. I cherished the moments spent in his presence. Yet, beneath the surface, my heart raced each time I spotted his name on the chart, and my stomach danced when he uttered my name. It was the sort of sensation that accompanies first love, an emotion that a married woman ought not to experience. One evening, as I was monitoring his vitals, he seized my wrist and maintained his grip for a moment longer than necessary. "You seem weary," he remarked gently. "You consistently prioritize others over your own needs." "Who is observing?" "Please go ahead." I ought to have maintained my distance. Yet in contrast, I murmured in solitude. Julian was released a week later. However, that was not the conclusion. He discovered me through social media. His initial message was straightforward. "I miss you. Claire the nurse." I gazed at the screen, my heart racing. One might choose to overlook it, erase it, or pretend it never occurred. However, I did not. A single message evolved into 2, then 10, and continued to expand. Our constant conversations were intricately intertwined with my everyday routine. Our conversations never touched on Daniel. There were no limits, only the two of us. For a time, that sufficed. One evening, Julian invited me to join him for coffee, just as friends, he insisted. I wished to place my trust in him. I longed to trust in my emotions. Upon my arrival, he was already present, his eyes brightening at the sight of me. Our dialogue. It continued for hours on end. The external realm faded into obscurity. As we lingered by my car, he offered me a subtle smile. "I had a wonderful time," he murmured gently. "Same here." It was truly incredible. I ought to have gazed at him. I ought to have gazed at Claire. A complaint has come to our attention. I inhaled deeply. "What is this? A confidential document concerning unprofessional conduct involving a patient." My world seemed to tremble beneath me. "That's absurd," I stuttered. However, as the words escaped my lips, my voice trembled with a sense of fragility. "We respect patient boundaries," he stated with conviction. "Your suspension commences immediately." As I exited the hospital, my thoughts became a haze, indistinct and unclear. All was in a whirl. As I stepped through the front door, I found Daniel waiting, my phone clasped in his hand. "You deceived me," he remarked, and in an instant, everything crumbled. Daniel remained calm and composed, not reacting in the explosive manner one might anticipate. That only complicated matters further. His silent despair was overwhelming. "How much longer, Claire?" His voice was heavy, brimming with fury and sorrow. "For how long have you been deceiving me?" My eyes stung with the threat of tears, yet I fought to keep them at bay. "I had no intention of causing you pain." He emitted a sound that resonated with emptiness, yet you did. The stillness lingered thickly in the air, unguarded and vulnerable. "Please just tell me the truth," he urged, his voice heavy with anticipation after what seemed like an eternity. "What prompted you to take this action?" I was at a loss for words that would truly resonate. "I experienced a profound sense of isolation." I confessed it almost inaudibly. Daniel exhaled sharply. "Did you genuinely believe he could resolve that?" "It extends far beyond that." His expression turned grave. "Absolutely not, Claire. Affairs are not mere coincidences. They are decisions, intentional, recurring decisions." His words struck me more profoundly than any blow, for he was indeed correct. In the shadows of night, he collected his belongings. I gathered my belongings into a bag and quietly slipped away. The following morning, I found myself without employment. Within a mere day, I found myself stripped of everything I held dear: my partner, my career, my reputation. I considered reaching out to Julian, yet the mere thought of it filled me with discomfort. He was never the solution, merely a diversion. At that moment, Lisa arrived. She rapped on my door, her arms folded, wearing a stern expression. "I can't take this anymore," she declared. "Let's begin." What needs to be rebuilt? All that remains is a void. Begin anew. Her words sank into my chest, weighty and impossible to overlook. That is how I progressed. The therapy sessions were incredibly challenging. Beginning anew felt daunting, yet I accomplished it. I penned a letter to Daniel, not to seek forgiveness, but to convey the truth. I have secured a new position at a clinic. Above all, I discovered the art of self-forgiveness. The path was fraught with challenges. It was straightforward. Yet with each passing moment, I made the decision to continue pressing ahead. After what felt like an eternity, I inhaled deeply and moved forward without glancing back. Beginning anew wasn't merely an option, it was a necessity I had to embrace. The most challenging aspect wasn't the loss of my marriage, my job, or even my reputation. I was confronting my own self. For weeks, I lingered in a haze, tormented by the choices that led me to this point. The nights stretched on, laden with doubt and countless inquiries. The questions lingered in my mind without resolution. Did I truly love Daniel? Could the outcome have been different? Had I chosen to speak with him rather than seeking solace elsewhere? Was I genuinely remorseful or merely frustrated about being discovered? Receiving the recommendation for that clinic job was truly a fortunate turn of events, even though it seemed like a regression. No one spoke my name in hushed tones or cast judgment on my history, yet I found myself in judgment. Each time I entered a patient's room, the burden of my actions pressed down on me. It pressed heavily upon me. I continuously reassured myself that I had moved beyond that version of myself. Yet a fragment of my being trembled at the thought that perhaps I still was. In the meantime, Daniel had faded away from my existence. I considered the idea of getting in touch. What is there for me to express? All that was important has already been expressed in my letter. The reality was straightforward. He had no obligation to me. He truly deserved more. On a certain night, I made the decision to call. I gazed at my phone, my heart racing with excitement. I had convinced myself that this day would remain a distant dream. For a brief instant, I paused, weighing my words with deliberation, quietude. Then his voice emerged, steady and composed, yet carrying a chilling undertone. I wanted to inform you that I have submitted the divorce papers. I inhaled deeply. I comprehend. They will be here shortly. Kindly sign and return them at your earliest convenience. A lump gathered in my throat. That was the moment, the threshold beyond which there was no turning back. Dear Daniel, at that moment, engulfed by uncertainty, I found it challenging to articulate my emotions, unsure of how to express them clearly. I apologize. He acknowledged it, saying, I understand. However, an apology does not alter the events that have already transpired. Suddenly, silence enveloped the queue. The conclusion of the marriage lingered, drawn out and excruciating. The legal matters were straightforward, no children involved, no significant assets to dispute. Yet on an emotional level, it was utterly devastating. It was truly devastating. The flat we once called home felt hollow, a mere shadow of the vibrant life we used to share. Lisa was my motivation. She refused to allow me to sink into my sorrow. Let's go rise and shine. It's time to get ready. We're going out, she'd say, pulling me along for coffee strolls, anything to show me that life continued to flow despite my missteps. You must learn to forgive yourself, she remarked one evening as we lounged on my couch, a bottle of wine resting between us. I acknowledged my uncertainty about the next steps, prompting me to seek further knowledge. That is how my journey began. Therapy transformed into my essential support. Dr. Patel. My therapist provided no simple solutions, but rather challenging realities. Claire, you're not a terrible person. Your decisions have been self-centered. Embrace that completely if you wish to progress. It was difficult to hear, yet it was precisely what I required. Time continued to flow, month after month. The burden of my guilt lingered, never quite dissipating. Yet it started to brighten gradually and subtly. That afternoon, upon leaving work, I paused to check the mail. Within lay an envelope containing the divorce papers. I brought them in, placed them on the kitchen table, and gazed at them for what seemed like an eternity. This marked the concluding chapter, the ultimate fragment of my marriage poised for my signature. My hand trembled as I reached for the pen. I signed my name without a moment's hesitation. When the divorce was finalized, I had transformed. I was no longer the same woman who I once sought validation in all the misguided corners. I transformed from the woman who once allowed solitude to misguide her. I remained a work in progress on my healing journey, yet I had grown more resilient. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself outside, enveloped by the serene charm of the twilight. At that instant, a profound tranquility enveloped me, a unique sensation I hadn't experienced in quite some time. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. A note from Daniel. I placed my trust in what it conveyed. I trust this message finds you in good spirits. I gazed at the words as if time had come to a standstill. A surge of emotion gripped my heart tightly. I understood that retreat was not an option. Perhaps in time, we will discover the strength within us to forgive. I responded. I remain present. I hope you are as well. As I pressed send, an immense burden was released from my shoulders. I signed the divorce papers, finally releasing a breath I hadn't even known I was holding. The end had come. With the passage of time, the discomfort gradually subsided. The former version of myself gradually disappeared. I had transformed into someone entirely new. I had acquired a wealth of knowledge. I had matured. As dusk approached, I strolled home from work when I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. A note from Daniel. I trust you are doing well. I gazed at the screen for a moment before responding. I'm here. I hope you're doing well as well. Once I pressed send, a subtle change stirred within me. Free from regret and longing, only tranquilly remains. For the first time in what felt like an eternity. After what seemed like an eternity, a soothing wave of tranquility enveloped me. I was certain that everything would turn out fine. The tale concluded not with a dramatic flourish or an ideal resolution, but through the embrace of reality and the opportunity for a fresh beginning. Errors do not determine our identity. What truly counts is our actions that follow. What are your thoughts? Have you ever found yourself in a position where you had to gather the fragments and reconstruct your life following a significant error? We welcome your insights in the comments section below. If this story resonated with you, feel free to like, subscribe, and share to discover more stories in a similar vein.